Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 11th episode of Women on Fire, the podcast. I'm Rhonda Weeks. This lovely lady over here on my left is my ministry partner, Mickey Kramer. And together we make Women on Fire Ministries. We hope you all are having a blessed day. We're going to talk about an interesting topic. We're going to talk about something that Mickey and I both have actually in common, which is what is it like to care for an elderly parent or an elderly family member. And I'm going to get us started with some scripture here. I'm going to read Ephesians chapter 6, verses 2 through 3. It says, honor your father and mother, and it may go well with you, and that you may enjoy long life on earth. And I want to make mention that that is the very first time that the Lord ever gives a commandment with a promise. That if we take care of our elders, we take care of our elderly family members, we take care of our elderly parents, we will have long life. Now, I'm going to ask Mickey to get us started because she has a little bit different and a unique, actually, situation that she and her husband went through with her parents, where they actually had to move in and live to care with her parents. So, Mick, you want to share a little something about that?
Yes. Well, it's great to be here with everybody. I think this is an amazing topic, and I'm so glad to be able to share with it because Rhonda and I are both, Rhonda is going through this currently. I have been through this with my parents, and it's great to be able to share about it. I have some statistics. I'll share those later. But my parents were... it's a journey, right, to care for your parents. With my parents, my father was ill and my mother was also ill. So we had both parents ill at the same time. Then, fortunately for us, I have 5 siblings. And so we all would take turns helping out. My father passed and my mother still needed care. So my husband and I made the choice to move in with her. And the wonderful thing about my siblings, and I'm very appreciative, is that we all took turns. And when I say took turns, we literally stayed with my mom when she was in the hospital 24/7. And we would take what we called shifts. So we would coordinate shifts. And we would plan out who would stay with my mom at what time. And you say, well, why would you stay with your mom 24 hours? And the reason is because she was on full-time oxygen. And when I say she was pretty sick, she was pretty sick. She couldn't get around. She was tethered to an oxygen machine along with some other different things that were going on. And we really were concerned with her care. And she would be frightened. She didn't want to be alone in the hospital, right? It's a scary thing. I've never been in that situation, but I can't imagine what it would be like. And there were a few instances, unfortunately, when they would come in for her breathing treatments. And there was a time or two when they forgot to turn her oxygen machine back on. So thank goodness we were there, because that could have been very detrimental. And it was just nice to be able to love and support her during that time. I think that did a couple things. That allowed my children to see that you care for your parents. Because it wasn't just my husband and I that moved in, but it was our children as well. And that brings me to something that I learned just with this podcast, that when I was reviewing for it, that's something that the terminology is called a sandwich. And that is an adult that's caring for their children and their parents at the same time. And there are a lot of people that are going through that now.
Yeah. You know, Mickey, you were talking about, you and your siblings taking shifts at the hospital. Don't we all wish we had that? When we all go through health issues or a health crisis, don't we all want somebody with us 24 hours a day? I know I do. I would never want to be alone. So that's such a blessing. And what an example you set for your kids of, I was reading this article just probably 2 weeks ago. I'm not even sure if we knew that we were going to be talking about this topic today. But it was an elderly woman. I think she said she was in her late 80s, but she wrote a letter and she prefaced it by saying, please don't tell my children that I wrote this. But she gave the dimensions of the assisted living place that she lived in. And I'm not knocking people that have to put their parents in assisted living. People have to work and support their families. I understand that. You know, full-time care, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it and work and pay the bills. So sometimes that's an option. But she gave the dimensions of her room in this assisted living facility, and she said, I'll just throw something out there. She said, I live in like a 20 by 20 room, and I have somebody who cares for me daily and feeds me daily and cleans my room. But I have children, and some of my children visit me weekly. Some visit me every couple weeks. Some visit me every couple months, and I'm lonely. And when I get lonely, I look at pictures of my grandchildren. And she said, which broke my heart, I wish my children knew that family were forever. I wish someone could tell them that family is forever. So, none of us want to feel like, we're disposed of as we get older. Nobody wants to be lonely. So what a wonderful example, Mickey, that you did of just, you and your husband moving in to care for your parents with your children. So do you have some statistics you want to share about that?
Yes. And before I do that, I do want to say I was fortunate because of the 5 siblings, we all pitched in. When my dad also needed care and we did the shifts, not everybody was as close as my husband Larry and I, and some of them would travel an hour and more. Wow. Some of them would take off work because they would sleep on the sofa. Wow. Because they wouldn't sleep in a bedroom, but they wanted to be right next to the bed that was then in the living room that my dad was sleeping in. So it was truly a family thing. For us, one person couldn't do it all. My mom couldn't take care of my dad, so the siblings had to do it, and they all stepped up to the plate. And it's funny because each person did something a little different. I had one sister, she was so kind, and she would lotion my mom's hand, or she would lotion my dad's feet, and that was the way she cared. I had a brother, and he would have long talks with my dad, and that's the way he would care for my dad. So each person had their own special way of caring. One might do meals and do it that way. So it was so great to see how each person had their own special way of caring. And that was really great too. And each one blessed them in their own special way.
That's beautiful. When my grandmother was in hospice, that's exactly how I showed care. I would lotion her hands and her arms, and toward the end of her life, or toward the end of life period, your skin gets a little different. It gets a little cracky and dry, and I always wanted to just try to give her a little bit of comfort from that by putting lotion on her hands and her arms, and I remember praying over her. And do you have some statistics you wanted to share?
Yes, let's go ahead and share these, which I'm going to tell you, when I looked these up, I was so surprised because there are a lot of people caring for their elderly parents. Approximately 17 to over 25% of U.S. adult acts as caregivers for their adult parents. So that was staggering to me. So we have a lot of people who are adults and caregivers to their parents. A lot of these people, over 64%, it says face high stress. And certainly that would be stressful. I remember the times we did it, and you may have the same thing. It's a little stressful. It can get a little stressful.
Very.
I remember our phone conversations, and it could get a little stressful when we were putting those schedules together. Roughly 4.5 million people belong to that sandwich generation, which is caring for both children and adults. I'll throw this in there. I remember Larry's father, same thing, sandwich generation. Larry and I would travel once a month up to Pittsburgh to take his father out. We'd stay the weekend, just Larry and I. The kids would be at home. That's when they were in high school. And we would take him out to go grocery shopping, get a haircut, certainly out for ice cream because that was his favorite. But that was a once a month thing. And that was about a 4.5 hour drive each way. And that was once a month. We did that for a long time.
I remember that. You were doing that still when we first met. When we first became friends, you were traveling up there to Pittsburgh. Yeah.
It was a big commitment. Prevalence, about 1 in 10 adults aged 51 or older provide assistance with basic everyday activities to their parents. That to me was staggering. 1 in 10 adults. So that's a lot of individuals who are caring for their parents. The majority of caregivers are women, 59 to 60%. And the median age of the caregivers are about 51 years old.
Wow.
So guess what, ladies? You're amazing. I mean, go figure. We are amazing.
Yes.
And you know what? We need to be talking about this because it is stressful. The commitment, caregivers age 55 and plus spend 1 to 2 hours per day on care. Rhonda can talk about that because she's in the midst of it right now. The financial and emotional toll, 64% of caregivers report high emotional stress, and near a quarter find it difficult to care for their own health. We cannot forget about ourselves.
That's right. If we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of anybody else. That's for sure. Yeah.
Financial support, 23% of Americans currently provide financial support for aging parents, with another 23% expecting to do so in the future. And the last trend is that the number of family caregivers for older adults increased by 32%.
Wow.
From 18.2 million to 24.1 million between 2011 and 2022. And I believe it's just going to continue to increase.
Wow, thank you for those statistics. You know, so many more people are caring for their elderly parents than I had realized, to be honest with you. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to that scripture that I opened with, Ephesians chapter 6, verses 2-3. I'm just going to read the first line. It says, honor your father and mother.
Yes.
Period. Honor your father and mother. It doesn't say honor your father and mother if.
Yes.
Honor your mother and father if they did everything right.
Yes.
Because let's face it, nobody gets perfect parents. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. And I'm not guilting or shaming anyone. And let me preface that by saying I'm not talking about if you went through any sort of abuse in the home. God doesn't want anybody knocking you around, not even your parents. So I understand that if people at home feel like they have to set healthy boundaries. Yes. I understand that. God understands that. I'm talking about, you know, the average person in a situation like I'm in right now where, you know, my mom fell and she broke her arm, and you might think, well, what's so hard about that? Well, she's 86 years old and her hips and her knees and her ankles aren't that strong. And she needs both hands, both arms to be able to lift herself, to push herself up, to get out of bed, to lift herself off the commode when she uses the facilities, to be able to lift herself out of a chair. So what I was really blessed to do, because I am the youngest of 7 children. 6 of us remain. My oldest sister passed away several years ago to cancer. But I am the one geographically closest to mom. So a lot fell on me, but I have a beautiful sister-in-law who really was like a best friend to my mom, that I was able to move in to help care for her, and I pay for her to do that every week. And that's been such a blessing, because as mom is, you know, moving a little bit more, we're almost 4 months into her fall, and she's trying to do a little bit more on her own. She's trying to be a little bit more independent. I am so grateful that I have my sister-in-law there that can spot her, or if something happens, if she falls, she doesn't have to be alone and wait there for hours until somebody gets there. But I understand, Mickey, what you were talking about in the statistics there about the stress level, because I'm a martial arts instructor and I have, 8 different locations, I guess. So my days that first month were filled with drive somewhere, teach an hour class, drive back to my hometown and check on my mom, drive out to the next location, teach an hour class, drive back, check on my mom. I would do that up to 3 times a day. And at some point I realized that was too much. So I want to say that too, you know, make sure you take care of yourself.
Yes.
Self-care is important.
Yes.
You know, nothing really changed from the first visit to the third. And I had my sister-in-law there, so it really wasn't necessary for me to stop by and visit 3 times a day. My sister-in-law, she does a lot of volunteering for our local fire department, and she's very busy with that. I think she's the chairman of the board or something like that. So I have to cover for her a lot of times, several times a week. So that means working all day, working full time, and then getting to mom's and maybe not getting home till 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock or later at night. But you know what I'm trying to do, Mick, is I'm trying to savor those moments.
Yes.
I jump up in my mom's bed and we watch all those old television shows that I have no interest in watching, like MASH and all the old shows my dad would watch.
Yes.
I Love Lucy, and I just try to savor those moments. And
Absolutely.
you know, sometimes I'll reach over and I'll hold her hand, and sometimes I'll reach over and hold her arm. And I know that as stressful as these times are right now, when I look back, I'm going to savor those moments.
Amen.
Because I got to do that. And that's a wonderful phrase that I love when I'm stressed. I get to do this. I get to be able to visit my mom. I get to use the car that God blessed me with to drive to my mom. I get to use that vehicle to serve her and get her groceries with the money that God blessed me with to fill that gas tank. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I have precious memories from spending time with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of them were easy. You know, I think of a time when I was with my mom. It was a beautiful spring day, and she wasn't able to get around very much. But we packed up one of those oxygen tanks, and we put her in that wheelchair, and I pushed her around the neighborhood. She hadn't been out much because she didn't get out much. One of her favorite things to do was sit and watch the birds on her favorite easy chair. But we got out and I pushed her. I made it up that hill, boy. Woo-wee. I think I even had a bead of sweat going down. But she didn't know. I just like, woo, no, Mom, this is great. But she was so happy to be able to see the neighborhood that she had lived in forever. And it was a highlight of her time. And that's the thing, it was beautiful. I remember my dad had a visit from a pastor where I went to church, and he was so pleased that he had come to visit him in the hospital. And I remember going to church that Christmas Eve, and it's just embedded in my mind, and the candlelight service, and we were singing the song, and I was just so full of joy because my dad heard the salvation message, not from me, because I've been banging it in there, but from somebody else that he was able to receive it from. And it was amazing. I remember another time I tried to fix my mom's spaghetti. And here I'm like, oh, I have to feed my mom something healthy, right? Because at this time of her life, she needs to be healthy. Enough with that ground beef. I want to give her turkey in her spaghetti. Well, dang if she didn't. I can't eat this. This isn't ground beef. And I thought, how can she taste the difference? You know, those little things too. So, you know, there's some give and take in that because sometimes our parents are set in their ways, right?
Yeah.
They want it just so.
Yeah.
And I remember laughing about my dad because, Rhonda, you hit on a very important topic, which is we get to do this. And our parents are our parents, right? They can only give to us what they've received. And sometimes it's not everything, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. It may not be everything I wish I would have gotten, but it's everything that they could give me at the time. And I would say that my dad was my 70 times 7 person. And people might say, what does that mean? Well, you know, in the Bible, it says, they say, Jesus, how many times do we have to forgive? And he says 70 times 7. Well, that was my dad. I love my dad. And I had the opportunity to continue to forgive him 70 times 7. Now, he was a fun man, and we would joke. He was very trying. He could be very trying at times, and he could hurt me deeply at times. And even until the end, he could say things that hurt and cut deep, but I still had that opportunity to honor him. And it was a privilege. And I have memories with him, very fond memories. So although it could be difficult at times with both of them, I cherish that time. And did I do it for them? Some was for them, some was for me, but I had to continually remind myself that I do this for God. Because if I was doing it for them, or if I was doing it for myself, I don't know that I would have been able to continue to do it. But I was doing it to honor God.
You know, that's a good segue into Mickey mentioned how difficult that it can be. You know, I don't want to sit here and say it's been a bed of roses. I can spend, you know, anywhere from an hour to several hours a day in addition to working full time at my mom's. Do I always feel appreciated? The honest answer is no. You know, or some days, are they difficult? Absolutely, yes, you know, but I get to do this. And you know what, as a Christian, I get to show grace. I get to give my mom a lot of grace. One thing I've noticed about my mom, Mick, is when she's stressed, she starts to yell. And who do you think she takes that out on? The person that she feels comfortable to take it out on. So I remember my first time I took her to the ortho for her doctor's appointment after she got out of the ER. I mean, I was yelled at the entire drive up, the entire time in the office, the entire drive home. And that was just how she processes anxiety. You know, she can't say I'm anxious. She just takes her stress out on me. And you know what? I take it and I just show grace. I understand, because at the end of the day, it's about treat people how you would want to be treated. I think as a rule of thumb, when I am 86 years old, I don't want to be in the ER alone. You know, every time my mom has gone to the ER, and it's been 3 times in the past year, it's me that she always calls, even though I say, Mom, I shouldn't be your first phone call. It could take me 20 minutes to get to you. Call your best friend that lives behind you. She could get to you in 2 minutes. If it's an emergency, you need somebody to get to you quick. Don't wait for me. I'll meet you at the ER. Guess who she always calls? But you know, in that too, is it stressful? Yes, but that means she feels safe with me. You know, so it's not always easy. You're not always going to be feel appreciated. You're not always going to feel loved. And some days, you know, I've wondered, why do I keep going back there? Because she's my mom, and I want to treat her the way I would want to be treated. And I'll read you this scripture. This is Proverbs 23:22. It says, listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Yes. So I get to pour out grace. And you know what? One of the highlights for me, Mick, was last week I finished the Daniel fast, and my sister-in-law was kind, and she made us a nice beef stew in the crock pot. It was my first day having some meat, right? So I couldn't wait to get to Mom's house. But, you know, usually she spends her time in her bedroom because it's difficult for her to get up and walk. But for that special meal, my mom got her cane and she walked out into the dining room and she sat down, and I said, you know, Mom, does it seem a little different being out here? Do you like it? And she said, yeah, it's a change of scenery. And you know what? I don't know how much got through, but it was an opportunity that I got to talk to my mom about salvation. It was just she and I at the dining room table, and I was just savoring that moment, that special moment of being somewhere different, having her be able to look around at this house that she paid for, she helped to pay for, and she really hasn't been enjoying, because her life right now is bedroom and bathroom that's adjacent to the bedroom. So to be out with her and see her looking around her house and enjoying her house that she worked hard to pay for it was a blessing. But I used that opportunity alone to plant that seed about the salvation message. And do you have anything else to share, Mick?
Yes, I wanted to share about a time that, with my mother, I remember taking her to the grocery store. Now, my mom at the grocery store, that was her outing, because she liked cooking. That's the way she showed her love. She was a homemaker. So one of the ways she showed love was to cook for people. She loved to cook, and she could cook. So the grocery store was her big outing later in life. And I remember some days I didn't want to take her to the grocery store. The grocery store is not my favorite place, but it was her favorite place. When she would go to the grocery store, she was one of these ladies that wanted to smell every tomato. pick up and feel every little orange and squeeze it to see, right? I remember one of my sisters in particular, when she would take her to the grocery store, my mother didn't like it so much because this one would rush her. And she would just rush her through everything. It's like, pick this, pick that, let's go, let's go. My mom didn't like that. She wanted to smell every tomato and squeeze every orange, and
Right.
because that was her outing.
Yeah.
So it was a whole process to go. But the thing is, that was the blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about time. And it's about the give.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's about, like, just like you're saying, like getting into the living room because your mom worked so hard, and that was like, yay, celebrate the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the get to. And, you know, walking through the grocery store and just being together and allowing her the privilege to go up and down every aisle at the grocery store because that's what brought her happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And truly, isn't it amazing when somebody can be happy, when your mom can be happy, when your dad can be happy? And the only other thing I want to touch on is this. When your parents get older, this is what I noticed. I think God is so amazing because you're a child, then you grow up into this adult world and you have so many years of adulthood that can be wonderful and yet stressful and so straining.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the senior years and you can become childlike again.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing. And I think that's a gift from God because he gives us that time. The Bible talks about childlike faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just his gift to say, okay, well, if you didn't get it here and you didn't get it all this time, I'm going to let you come all the way back to here because it says childlike faith.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he gives us that time to, like, let us get it.
Mm-hmm.
If we haven't got it here, here you go again. And I just think the gift of being a senior and that childlikeness is something to be valued. It's beautiful. And I don't know if we value it enough or we put it on a shelf.
Mm-hmm.
So I really value my parents. I value age. I value that place in life. And I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, you know, that's what that was when your mom didn't want to eat spaghetti made with turkey. That's that childlikeness coming out, right? That's when my mom's stress level is through the roof because who likes to go to the doctors, right? We usually don't go to the doctors because we're healthy. We go because something's wrong, especially to the ER. But when her stress comes out like that, that's that childlikeness in her. I noticed that the 3 times I was with her at the ER this past year, that I saw fear in my mom's eyes, that it was very childlike. And, you know, one of the times on my birthday, actually, I was at the ER with my mom for 8 hours. I had my arm around my mom the entire time, and I was rubbing her arm and rubbing her back, and she was never alone. And I saw an elderly woman in a wheelchair. I guess her daughter had to work. She pushed her mother in a corner up against a wall and gave her a kiss and left. And my mom and I were there for 8 hours, and that lady was there by herself. Again, treat people how you would want to be treated. If I know the times in the past that I've had to go to the ER for things, you know, I didn't want to be alone, you know? Mm-hmm. So we're gonna finish up with this, and this might be a subject that we might do. That was Mickey rocking the camera.
Rock the boat, don't rock the boat, baby.
That's Mickey kicking the camera, rocking. So we weren't doing this. We didn't have an earthquake in Maryland. But I'm gonna read this scripture for you. And you know, this is so poignant, and so many people are going through this today. We might actually do a part 2 next month, which I think is very wise, because I feel like this podcast went way too quick, and we still have so much to share. But 1 Timothy chapter 5 verse 4, it says, "But if a widow has children or grandchildren, their first duty is to show godliness at home and to repay their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God." And with that, I say, I hope that we have blessed you today. I hope that we have encouraged you if you're taking care of your parents or your grandparents. And do you have anything to say before we sign off, Mickey?
Well, this made me miss my mom.
Yeah.
And if you have anything that you'd like to share with us, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Share it in the comments. And as always, don't forget to hit that like button and hit on that bell to be a follower and a subscriber, because I think we're probably going to do a part 2 of this next month. But we hope this brought some great encouragement to you all if you're taking care of some elderly family members. We wanted you to know that you're not alone. We wanted to share some very personal stories. And with that, stay safe, stay warm if you're on the East Coast, and bless you, and we love you, and we'll see you next time.
Don't rock the boat, baby. Let it rock the boat.